This is Palm. Okay, well, no, this is Palm.
Gotcha. At this time, I call this High Springs City Commission workshop to order, January the 12th at 6:38. We already had the invocation of pledge allegiance on the other meeting, but now we will go into the roll call.
Mayor Williams?
Here.
Vice Mayor Jennings?
Here.
Commissioner Evans is absent. Commissioner Jamerson?
Here.
Commissioner Weller?
Here.
Matt. All right, Mr. City Manager, it's all on you.
You bet. I'm on the hot seat tonight. Mid-Tower couldn't make it. Rural Water had another meeting. We've had meetings with all those DEP, but I want to start with the sewer first. Okay, our sewer plant's working great, and don't see much change for that. We're keeping a constant vigilant on the amount of capacity, and when that capacity in a few years gets a little tighter, we will tell the commission that we probably need to move forward. But right now, everything's working well. The growth is being taken by the plant, and so the issue is that we want to start going out for grants. We've talked to the Suwannee River Water Management District as Mid-Tower, and Mid-Tower is making some inroads with the governor, but everything goes through the DEP and then Suwannee River. So we'll be always dealing with Suwannee River on our grants. The condition that Suwannee River has on us is that they want the largest bang for their dollar. And that may not be within your stage or phase 4 and 5. We may have to cut out between both those, or we may have to even find a different area that has the most residential on quarter-acre lots or less to go into the sewer. Because it's that type of grant, they would pay for it all. We would, as I see it, would ask the commission to levy a impact fee on each one of those homes paid over a period of 2-3 years. The issue really is with the commission, as it has been in the past. People have come with petitions and requests to be exempted. If we go for a grant and we receive it and we turn it down, it's going to be very difficult to get another one. So it's something that the commission needs to think about before we actually go into getting grants.
You want to comment?
Comments, I'm looking for.
I don't want to sound too whatever. I'm not concerned. That's wrong words.
Yeah.
People are going to listen to this. I'm concerned about it, but to me, that's not the issue. The issue is, and the reason that we've been fighting this thing, or I've been doing this thing for 3 years, is you get a grant, people hook up. That's a completely separate issue. Right. The issue is, how do we fund it each year on an annual budget? To hook somebody up to it through a grant is a separate issue to the state's requirement of us properly funding and adequately funding it.
Right.
We just did a $3 raise, and they said we're still 30-something% underfunded for the system. To me, the issue that we have to do, and I'll be honest with you, I'm extremely disappointed that Mid-Tower is not here and so forth, and I'm glad the attorney's here. I think a couple things. If you're on the sewer, I'm on it. I want to know 10 years from now the thing's going to still be here.
Mm-hmm.
I want to know that the city's still going to be able to maintain it. We have no plan. We have nothing in place that sits there and says, what are we going to do on a yearly basis to make darn sure that when this grinder pump goes out, we got a new one sitting over here. We go year to year, and we hope we have enough money, or we hope that they don't go. I believe our most crucial decision we have to do is we gotta figure out how we're gonna go about funding this thing, maintenance, repair, and replacement. The first question that has to be asked, and I think which I think is answered, and obviously previously it wasn't, is this is a 5-phase project. It is a citywide project. With that in mind, the funding of this citywide sewer system needs to be citywide. It is an undue burden to put the total cost on the people who followed the ordinance and followed the law and hooked themselves up. And the fact that people petition not to get on it and aren't on it and still aren't on it after 10 years, I don't understand how that happens when you have a law. So I think the issue before us, and I applaud you, Mr. Booth, on the grants and hooking more people. I don't want to minimize that. I applaud that. I think what we need, and be honest with you, and I'm going to be facetious now, I don't need to be here for the rest of this on the sewer, because I want to know from the engineer and the grant people and so forth, I want to know how we're going to fund this thing going forward. And if we're not, and I want to know from the attorney, from a legal standpoint, what funding mechanisms are available to us to where we can fund this thing and spread this baby out citywide. Otherwise, the people who are on it are getting a royal hose job. They did what the ordinance said, and now they're getting penalized because we're not going to go through with the other 2.5 phases, the remainder of 3 and the other 2. So what if we would have started with phase 5 and worked down? A whole different story.
Mm-hmm.
So to me, the whole issue is we as a commission owe it to the citizens to come up with a funding plan that will guarantee going forward this system is financed. Because if we can't sit there and look them in the eye and say, look, this is what we're going to, they may not like it. But we're going to have to pony up to the deal, at least in my mind, and this is just me speaking. Otherwise, to go year to year to figure out how we're going to do this, I don't get it. So I mean, I like the legal. I thought we'd have legal stuff here tonight. I thought MidTower would be here tonight. They would. I'm concerned with the capacity. I'm concerned with it. How are you going to fund it? How are you going to increase it?
I agree.
You're sitting here saying we got 2 to 3 more years. Well, how are you going to fund it? You going to go out and get another grant? You going to go out and get it?
Mm-hmm. That's
all right. I'll say this and then I'll be quiet on the deal because I'll get to the 3 years we've been talking about this as far as come up the plan. We're no closer now than we were. The $3 is fine. I won't me personally promote or go for any more increase unless we have it from a citywide thing. This is me. Because ultimately, if we don't fund it, it's going to be a citywide problem. If we don't figure out a way to do it and we don't have the money, ultimately every citizen in this city is going to be impacted, so we're going to have to go take money out of reserves and so forth to take care of it. It is a citywide issue. And this can't be an us versus them.
no.
It's got to be a city come together, and for the health of the city, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, what do we do that ensures the sustainability of this system in this city? And if we don't, this sucker is going to drain us like it's never been done before. So I'm done.
The bonds really said that when they did this system, that this system could be self-sufficient at 2,200 customers. They never really got into how they were going to get those customers, and the grant money really provided for 1,200 or 1,000 less, and that's where we really ran out. We're putting more and more people on because of the because we had some grants and because the subdivisions are building out. But for us to get to that 2,200 number to be self-sufficient, we're going to have grants and move forward. Now there is one idea, and that was our last finance director, and I understand more and more why he wanted to do it. He wanted to put the 2 funds together. You still get charged for your sewer and your water, but basically or technically, we put it together and the bottom line is the bottom line. And we're probably gonna have to do that anyway, because we have the Attorney General or the Auditor General really wanting us for that fund to be self-sufficient. And that, I think that fund has to take in the water and that we operate as one. And then the bottom line is probably zero. Yes.
Well, even if you do that, we're still not, to say we're self-sufficient because you're combining those two funds, we really aren't in the fact of the maintenance issue, because when
That's absolutely right.
because when this was the system was put in and funded, it was to put the system in without any attention to the fact that these grinder pumps are only good for a certain point in time, and that we're going to have to constantly be doing it. And I certainly agree that it is a citywide issue, and that we need to have our attorneys, and we can give the direction to them at a next commission meeting, I suppose, to look out there and see what's available or what cities are doing, if those kind of things can be implemented citywide for maintenance of infrastructure, basically. Sure. I guess is what you'd call it. Whether phase 4 and 5 ever goes comes into existence, if you can get a grant that fully funds putting people on wherever that is, I'm fine with that. But I do agree that there's got to be some system, some mechanism to find a way to fund the system itself for maintenance purposes on a citywide basis.
Well said. Mr. James?
I pretty much would agree, not pretty much, I definitely agree. It has to be some way that we can come up with something that will make this system sustain itself. Because in no way is it fair, I don't care how you look at it, to expect a handful of people to be responsible financially for a system that was designed for the entire city. I don't care how you look at it. And I happen to be one of those people that you're forcing to do that. And do I like it? Absolutely not. And I know that there's a lot of other people out there that don't like it, because there's a lot of rumbling out there about doing a lawsuit. So I think we need to buckle down and come up with some way to try to resolve this issue. We've been dragging it on and dragging it on and dragging it on. We got to do something. You got to give some relief to the few people that have been drawn into this, that's now being responsible for carrying the system. We got to do something.
Yes, I think it's what everybody said here. And then again, as I said it, I heard me one time before, it is a citywide project. And I think it's unfair for the residents of 1200 to carry the whole load. So again, we need to come up with a way, because 10 years just down the road. So we got to stop kicking the can, as someone would say. We got to, and we are elected officials to do what's best for the city of High Springs. Not a certain group of people who are gonna get mad. People get mad all the time. That's why we are elected officials, to take the rein and ride the horse. That's why we get the big bucks. That's I should get a laugh right there, but but that's it's just we like I said, we're not concerned about people getting mad, but again, it's not about a certain group of people who don't want to see advance, who don't want to see changes, who think we should live the way we lived in 1950, 1960. Those days are long gone. No return. No return. It is what it is. So as a city, and I'm hoping that when we're looking at this, instead of if we had to know the information, what we know now about those grinder pumps, I wish we never had purchased them.
Right.
But we sold that and we can't go dig them up now.
We're not ever gonna put other ones in areas that have no grinder pump.
Yes.
So the grants going forward, it is understood that we're always going to have gravity. And that's what the engineer, and he'll have to be here soon because I'll move to water here soon.
Hold on a second before we go there. Mr. Mayor, I would ask this. It's easy for government, and I saw it first 2 years on my thing here, when this bit here is, we pontificate. And we'll come back a month from now and we'll do the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
I want something, this is me personally, I know it takes 5. I want something brought back to us in a reasonable time period, 30 days. But I want to know from a legal standpoint, what we can do legally to raise the funds within the city. I want the engineers to tell us how to, I don't want 6 months from now us sitting here and saying the same opinionated words and nothing's been done. That's what government does. So I would ask, Mr. Mayor, that we direct the city attorney or the city manager within 30 days, bring us back, and you may come back and say, Scott, sorry, you're stuck the way the grant's written.
Right.
Okay, but I would like to know what options are available to us, infrastructure repair. Is there something, some way we can devise something? So then we can make a decision and we can move on, because I don't want to be back here another month, 2 months from now, and having another workshop trying to figure out what we can do.
Right.
We know what the issue is. Now let's find a way to fix it and then vote on it. So if we could direct them to do that, there's really nothing more on the wastewater until we understand what options are available to us, and then we vote on whether or not we want to do it.
Understand. And I have a meeting with the attorneys tomorrow. I certainly did. I wanted this because if we're going to move forward very quickly on grants, I didn't want to wind up, I guess, embarrassed when everybody turns them down.
But the grants you're going for are grants that does not require matching.
That is correct.
And I guess if for us to tell you to go forward, we have to put it on an agenda that we can vote on to say, to give you direction.
Right,
to
that's
do
what
that,
I'll do.
You know,
Yeah, and I'll certainly talk with the attorneys to find out what kind of mechanism. Other cities, there are a few other cities that have grinder pumps. And they had to come up with some kind of an arrangement to be able to maintain those.
But once, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, whether, and it may be that there are cities out there that don't have grinder pumps, but they have some kind of infrastructure fund
Right.
that the whole, doesn't matter what it's, not that it doesn't matter what it's used for, but it is there to use for infrastructure purposes, whether, and I guess the question would be if there are those kind of mechanisms, would those kind of mechanisms prevent us from directing those funds to be used for replacement of grinder pumps?
Don't know, but I'll certainly start that conversation tomorrow.
I think the grant thing is that's a no-brainer.
Yeah.
You want to use the grant to sign people up.
Right.
That's the no-brainer. I mean, that's what you want to do. To me, that's not the issue. You actively seek the grants. What the issue is as Commissioner Weller said, is the maintenance going forward, that the people have to have confidence. And let me say, they have to have confidence that we're making decisions that's going to ensure the sustainability.
Understand.
Okay.
The issues, I think, as your manager has delineated, are that you're about 1,000 members short of an operational system as it sits right now, that it needs 1,000 hookups for residential at least, and maybe less than 1,000 if it's commercial. In my experience with the municipal government, I have never heard of the sewer fund or the sewer system as a money maker. It's always bleeding money. There's other utilities, electric particularly, some other utilities that are money makers for cities, but I've never heard of the sewer system being a money maker. It's usually breaking even at best, and it's requiring some add-on. And I think what he's saying is, and it would be really helpful for engineers to say, okay, at what level exactly do we get to the point where we have that nexus between the people on the system and the monies that we have coming in and the operation of the system where it gets close to an even point. In my tenure here, I think just from a financial standpoint, we've gotten stable overall in the city. And I think one thing from an outsider, not finance director, but an outsider looking in, Ed does a good job at increasing revenues and watching our expenses. And so our overall city, at least from my perspective, is way different today than it was back then. There's a whole variety of funding mechanisms that can be used to get an additional 1,000 people onto the system. And the best one and the no-brainer is the grant system. And that's, because we don't have to pay those monies back, and so you're not further bleeding the system. My experience has been that USDA sometimes needs money, the federal government needs money, and if our city is strong enough financially, we have other funds and reserves, and we can pay off at a discount our sewer system loans, then the government sometimes takes a discount on that. When you do that and your loans become less in your USDA funded system, then again, you're improving the overall nature of what it is that you're doing. You unfortunately, we have inherited a system that has maintenance costs far higher than I think were ever contemplated when this system was engineered and explained to you. I think the equation is about $1 million more for 1,000 people from what I've seen. Grinder pumps compared to a gravity-based system, which goes lower and you have to dig lower, and that's why you can't retrofit a grinder pump system into a gravity system, but you're talking about an additional $1 million for 1,000 people in the system, basically. And so you or your predecessor said, look, let's go for the cheaper system without knowing that we're going to have these tremendous maintenance costs for our grinder pumps. So not only do we have a system that's not working at an equilibrium as far as sewer systems go, but you're also having higher maintenance costs. And I think the equation that he's got to look at is, okay, we know that now, and we're going to have to plan for that in the future and how we do that. The money at USDA right now is really cheap. It's 2.5% loan. They do grant funding as well as a mix of loan funding and that sort of thing. And I'm certainly not advocating right now that we go after loan funds. But it seems to me like our focus should be on, okay, we know the legislature is now coming back into session. We know that wellhead protection and stream protection is going to be a biggie. You're talking about all this money that's going down into Okeechobee. What can we do? Do we need some help in our legislature delegation to see if we can get a part of those funds? If we could get some grant funding to add on those 1,000 customers to the system at no loan value to the city, now all of a sudden he's got a very different equation. And if he's doing it in a gravity-based system, we don't have the maintenance costs with this next phase of the system. That's a very different situation for Ed to deal with as far as the overall operations of the system. As he said, there's other funding mechanisms that we can look at. There's community development districts that can be implemented. I've never done one personally. I can look at it. And that, at least in that district-wide can be funding that particular phase of a sewer system. You look at revenue bond funding as another source, straight up loans. Obviously your USDA funding is probably going to be your best bet for this sort of thing. You can get it for populations that are under 10,000 folks. So, my my belief would be that our best alternatives financing wise are looking at what is the potential for grant funding and looking at that very seriously. Do we need some help up in Tallahassee to see if we can get some assistance with that, and how realistic is that for us? And then look at the USDA system, work with Midtower to see what can we do to up our numbers to at least get to 2,200 with where we're at right now without taking on a lot more debt. And I think then all of a sudden the equation becomes a lot easier for him. I think that's in the nature of what he's talking about. So I think what my job is and Ed's job is right now is to talk to the legislative delegation and to find out, can we get some of this money? Is that realistic? Is that coming down the pike? Because that's where our number one goal would be. Number two is to get with Midtower, implement Midtower with USDA, and what kind of grant funding can we get through them, as well as the potential of low-cost money to get some more folks onto the system. The most unpopular thing that I could say to you is inch up your ad valorem taxes. It doesn't generate a lot of revenue, as you all know, and it conversely creates a very unpopular situation for you, and create more revenue over here, which then can be utilized to put money over in your sewer system. But that's certainly one of the options that we have. It's probably the most unpopular option that's out there. I think we can also look at sewer connection fees, impact fees, and those sort of things. And I think one of the problems has been that we relaxed the rules, and so some people paid these connection fees and impact, and some people did not, and it's just created a big mess. So either we need to have rules we follow, or we only connect with grants, or whatever it is, but whatever those rules are implemented uniformly, and we do it. My experience also has been, and this is a horrible experience to have, where you go through sewer connection fees and assessments, and the poorest people in our community cannot pay it. And you go through these foreclosure proceedings where we're actually taking people's property and homes because they haven't been able to connect to the sewer. And I've experienced that, and that is an area that we do not want to go down under any set of circumstances. And in those days, we didn't have the low cost or the folks that have low income grants where we can assist. So thank goodness we've advanced from what we were doing 30 years ago. But it's a five-headed hydra that we've got to look at here, and I think we'll certainly work with that and talk to our legislative folks first. I think that's our job number one.
We are when people abuse their grinder pumps, and they are, we are now charging them a maintenance fee for doing so. That went on for a long time. We didn't. I need to talk about water, okay?
Before you move on, we got a question in.
Sure.
Ross Ambrose, High Springs resident. I moved to High Springs when the whole sewer system was being considered and sat in these chambers while a lot of presentations were being done. So it's really interesting to hear all of you who are now responsible for it having to make real decisions about some of the things that were talked about when they were only speculating what would happen down the line. And the first problem you have is the whole thing, and as you know, was designed to be a 5-phase system, and rural development presented that because that's how they're going to get funding versus a 1-phase system. Okay, it falls apart when decisions were made not to move forward, and you've got the pieces to deal with, and it sounds like you're taking some action to figure out how to get more users, which is great. But the mystery about the maintenance, that was something that people sat in this chamber and said you were going to have problems with grinding. You were going to have dedicated employees that all they do is start with one, and X number by the time phase 3 rolls in, you're going to have 2 full-time employees that all they do is fix grinder pumps. And it was budgeted and then there were commissions who started combining roles and taking things away and whatever. But the fact that the grinder pumps were going to be a problem was not unknown at the time. There may have been more problems for whatever reasons than anticipated, but there were going to be dedicated employees that's all they did was fix grinder pumps. That was planned for. So that's not a surprise. Looking for grants, great. As a citizen who's currently on the system, like Commissioner James and Jameson, I have a bone to pick for something you have control of right now. And that is, there is a city ordinance that says there's a sewer line in front of a house, you're supposed to be hooked up. And it's a huge can of worms to deal with people that don't have the money. I mean, I understand that. But there's a group, probably about 45 to 60 homes, that either paid impact fees when they had their homes built. There wasn't a sewer available, so they also paid to have a septic tank put in. And they're still on their septic tank now that there's a sewer line in front of their house, and they paid impact fees. And in that same group, there's another set of people who didn't pay impact fees because a commission in power chose to waive the impact fees. So my point of view as a citizen that's on the system, that's on the city now. So those two groups of people in that 45 to 60 homes, the city should be hooking them up right now to help collect that fee and get closer to that 2,200 number. And if you talk about citizens that have talked about legal concerns, to me, that's pretty much right on the city. And why aren't those people hooked up? The city either is holding their money in the impact fund, or it waived the fee and chose not to collect it as an economic incentive to builders. But having done that, you're now responsible to hook them up. And that's a significant number of homes. So I would hope this commission would expect city staff to come back to them pretty quickly with a list of what those addresses are. Because they're out there. And they were done. There's a home right near my house that falls right into that category. And they're scattered around the city, and homes that were built on lots. You just have to go back and start looking at when building permits were pulled. Those people, and the money should just come right out of the impact fee fund. What money's in there? There'd be a lot more if we hadn't paid for engineering that we aren't going to use. But I think that the city attorney needs to be taking a look at that, and the city staff need to be really taking a look at that. What's your liability for not hooking those people up and demanding people who are on the system pay a higher than normal bill that still makes you in default of what the agreement was when the loan was taken from rural development? And that's something you can do something about right now and be put out to bid fairly quickly and hook those people up. They're going to have to start paying the bill. They may not like it. That doesn't matter. The ordinance says they need to hook up. They either paid money at one point or the city waived the fee, hook them up.
Water. We've all had those letters. I've been getting sick of them. All right, this is from the EPA, DEP. And this is their assessment of our system. The problem isn't with our system, it is the water that's coming out. And the best way for me to explain that is, here's the water directly from the well, all right? And they're clear. I mean, there's not stuff in it. But the water that's, you see that if the water just sits there, the dissolved organics, which is causing our problem that we draw out of the aquifer, causes a problem. And this problem on this piece of cement is the same thing that's happening in the pipes. And what we've been doing is flushing it. And we thought that the flushing program was going to work. And then now, obviously, our numbers are starting to go up again. There are two solutions to this that aren't very expensive. In fact, I have the money in the budget to do so. One is somewhat experimental, and I have to get Midtower to really look into it. The other one is chloramines. If we add chloramines to our system, that's ammonia, a very weak form of ammonia. It then reacts to that dissolved organics we're pulling out, and our numbers then become within the limits. There's always some drawbacks to all systems. The drawbacks to this is people who are on dialysis and possibly other medical devices may have to take and do something different. I can't tell you what it is now, but I certainly will. The other system is hydrogen peroxide. And both, and to be honest with you, the cost of doing all this is within the $20,000 to $30,000 that I have budgeted for maintenance that we could pay for. Hydrogen peroxide has been successful in about 3 communities so far. Now, I think DEP wants us to do so as somewhat of a test community, but I want our engineers to understand there doesn't seem to be many drawbacks to the hydrogen peroxide. It goes in first, and then the chlorine goes in. So we're talking about paying for 55-gallon drums of chlorine along with an injector. That's not a huge cost factor. As I said, that's a $20,000 to $30,000 expense.
You said chlorine, you mean, or are you talking about hydrogen peroxide?
Hydrogen peroxide, no, but the chlorine goes in also.
So we'd be using chlorine and hydrogen peroxide.
That's right. By the time we got to the chlorine, then it's out of the system. And DEP is, although we'll have to continue putting out letters, they're not going to come back to us with any kind of an order till we got a chance to work our system out in our problems. We are still going to have to continue to flush the system because we're flushing some of this stuff that reacts. Both the fire department and the water department will be involved in the flushing. That will be ongoing from now on. There are some very exotic systems. And I'm not so sure that, they're in the neighborhood of millions. And I think right now these fairly inexpensive systems will work. And as I keep you in the loop, we will come down to which system probably is the best one to use. But this isn't a sewer system costing millions of dollars that may or may not work. This is a system that's very affordable.
So what I'm hearing is the problem that we're having is the water that comes to the system.
That is correct.
Okay. So then at what point do you put the hydrogen peroxide in?
As we pull it up out of the well, that's where it's injected.
Okay. And so do you inject the hydrogen peroxide and it go through whatever, and then you put the chlorine and get to another.
Well, it goes gas. That is correct. Yeah. And so it's adding another step to the system. We would do the same thing with chloramines also. The same thing. We would add those just as the water's coming out of the well, and then it goes into the chlorine. That chlorine gas will always be there. We're just looking to add another step to meet the EPA requirements. I want to say again, our water is drinkable. It's clear. It doesn't have any substances that are lead or poisonous. It has dissolved biological. And what that is It's probably miniature pieces of leaves, maybe grass. All water has other stuff in it. Ours just has a little bit more of this dissolved biologicals. There's probably a number of reasons for that. The river has been running pretty high. We've had a warmer winter. But I think this problem will persist. It persists in many communities. The chloramines are, I give you an example of Miami is using chloramines in their water for the same reason. Lake City uses chloramines. They also use another system besides chlorine. They use no, not hypochlorite. There's another system they use that's very expensive. So this is not a system just that the city of High Springs has this problem, and I'm not sure it's a real problem, but it is when you have to put out letters, and so that's where we stand. And within 30 to 45 days, I will be in front of you with the engineer, and we will then have a system that we want to connect to the water system. And that's our solution to those letters.
Okay, so just to clarify on the deal, because I'm gonna address this the same as the sewer.
Yes.
Okay, we got a problem, I understand that. The amount of algae and so forth in the rivers and so forth when it comes up and so forth, I imagine that's part of it. I think what the citizens wanna know from us is, what are we doing about it? And I understand Rodney's worked his tail off, and the guy tells me it's good, I don't question that. So 45 days, we come back with a plan to do it. I think it's important that we keep this information out there so people understand. And I think in the 45 days, I think we need to make sure that we educate, put something in the paper.
Right.
I mean, put something out so that people know what we're doing, so they're not left guessing as to what's going on. I mean, this all sounds logical, and the engineers will come here and do it. I just think it's important guys, and not to belabor the point, that all the people want to do, man, is trust the people that are doing it. We may make a bad decision, but at least they have to know that we did it in earnest, and we did it with nothing this bit. So 45 days, put the guy up here, let's make an educated decision, and let's just make sure we're keeping the public in the loop.
Right. Well, this is one way of doing it.
Right, and I agree.
And that's really why we're doing it.
Right, thank you.
Is I didn't want in 45 days to throw it at you and say, okay, we have a problem, and here's the solution, here's the engineer, and he'll tell you about it. I want you to know we're doing it step by step. I want to talk to Perry. Perry is a town that has the hydrogen peroxide. I'm sending our people over to Lake City to see their chloramines and how it works, what problems they have. I mean, if we'd done that with the sewer system, we probably wouldn't have what we have. But we're making sure we do. And I know it concerns the public, because on the bottom of that letter it says, you might get cancer or something. What it doesn't say is that you have to drink 2 gallons for 70 years, and you have a 1 in 10,000 chance of getting it. I'll take those chances. Better than the lotto.
Some of the food we probably even worse than that. So
Yes, I agree.
And just quickly looking through this white paper on hydrogen, using hydrogen peroxide, it said there are, it does list some disadvantages.
Right.
And I would certainly, before we go make a decision on any of this, would like to have, I guess, rural water here and whoever else that is knowledgeable about that to tell us exactly what those disadvantages mean and how do you tackle them if something like that what they call the disadvantages, and I don't understand necessarily what those disadvantages mean. Says turbidity requires filtration. What's the process if we come across, if we implement this and we find that we have these problems? What do you do to resolve them?
Well, that's right. One of the ways is that we have to burn out the system. That's just a term. That basically means we stop using either the chloramines or the hydrogen peroxide, and we just run chlorine in there, because there will be some residuals. There's a problem with end pipes. We have a number of pipes that just dead end. What we're going to do is try to loop some of them. Some of them are over there on River Road or
River Glen?
Boat Ramp Road.
Yeah.
That needs to be looped in. And that's where we're doing some of the tests, because we have dead ends. We have more of a likelihood of having problems. And so we're looking at all solutions. And I'll be honest with you, Rural Water has been very helpful at this point in trying to come up. They are an arm of DEP. And so I challenge DEP, instead of just telling us to send out letters, come up with solutions. And so they are. And that's why we're here. I'm sorry they couldn't make it, but they certainly will the next, as the engineers will. And so I want the public to know the water, I drink the water, it is drinkable, and what's in it is not like Flint, Michigan with lead and everything else. It is just some dissolved biological.
Stuff we have no control over.
I have no control over it. None at all. And if you have a well, you're drinking the same thing without chlorine.
Yes, sir.
Ross Ambrose. I like these workshops. I mean, I have complete faith in Rodney and the decisions that are being made with the two wells that are co-located and that the water's safe. But I'm looking back at previous conversations that have been had by engineers, including when we even had the year, I think they had designated 5 companies as city engineers and were rotating them so that no one company was getting all the business. And one of the recommendations long ago, when Rural Water bought land for the city of High Springs to create a new well field, one of the issues that they said would be coming forth in our region of North Florida as populations grew and as areas were developed is that 2 wells that are co-located would have trouble always being able to provide a clean source of water that didn't require extraordinary treatment. So there was a move years ago and a recommendation by an engineering firm, I believe they were out of Jacksonville, who said, you've done all the testing in the new well field and you've done your small wells. You need to put a bigger well out there and start drawing it and monitoring it, because you are years behind in developing a new well field, so you have alternatives to 2 wells that are co-located. And they were all ready to move forward. Are you ready to do this? We've got the bids. And the commission went, under its new leadership, no. And in the same, I believe it was the same meeting or real night, they rolled back the water increase rate that was supposed to help build the funds for that. You're solving the immediate problem, which is great. But as you have to start thinking about a budget in the fall and tax rates, what are you doing to develop that well field and pick up on that engineering data that said the city is way behind and you need something other than 2 wells that are co-located? And I'm real interested to see what this commission does and puts in the budget for the coming year regarding that well field that's sitting there that needs to be developed and explored, because maybe the solution would have been, you'd have more flexibility on where water's coming from. depending on what's going on underground.
Just an addendum to that, Rodney is actually testing those wells. They have a test well there. And we're testing the well. What we don't certainly want is the same kind of water we're having a problem with out of that same well. It's fairly close to where our two wells are at. It's also I guess, not located, but it's a joint project between Alachua and High Springs.
And Alachua has said they are not interested in developing that to go alone, which is their decision
I think
3 years ago.
they've changed their
They
mind.
have changed their idea because the amount of water they have this side of 75 is starting to diminish. And so they're looking at that possibility. But these talks take years too between commissions and how we do it. That we're going to do one pump, one station. We're going to do two. So there's a number of issues to be resolved.
There are. And it's been kicked down the road continuously, and against the advice of a number of engineering firms, this city has chosen not to spend the money and move forward. And one of the reasons at the time was Alachua said, no, we're not interested. So suddenly there was no partnership. But if you're going to keep kicking it down the road at the speed of government, we're going to have problems that aren't solved with
Right.
money that's in a $30,000 budget.
I understand.
And
we will certainly
that is the reality. I mean, the Pig House property, which isn't popular historically in the city, but one of the reasons that property was purchased was to gain a right-of-way, not only potentially for a street, but to be able to connect two remote ends of major water lines. That was one of the reasons, because this whole problem of dead ends isn't new. But commissions have chosen not to find the money, budget the money, or deal with the fact that we have a spidered water system with dead ends all over the place, which they said wasn't a good thing. And now you add aging pipes to it and a water system with more, organic material in it. Yeah, it's not new. It's going to cost some money, and we need to be planning for it and spending for it, despite the angry people in the community.
Oh.
Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Richard Darty, resident of High Springs. I'm not sure what my current address is. The water thing, I'm a salesman by trade, so this is a question and answer real quick. What's the one thing y'all all have in front of you that is in common?
What?
It's a bottle of water. So I'm gonna help you out, Mr. Booth. You say it's clean, it's crisp, tasty, and you drink it. You're gonna come here Thursday night. I'd like to see a pitcher of water, High Springs, best water in Florida, right? And a glass in front of all y'all. Because after you said it, you took a sip out of your bottle of water. I think it just go leaps and bounds towards reinforcing the community if our elected officials were drinking the water.
Agreed, I will.
And we generally have had, till recently, the pitchers of water up here.
Yeah, it just looked nice. It looked better when people come up here and complain.
When we were getting letters in the mail.
Yeah, I know.
It wasn't a catcher
Yeah.
company. Thank you all very much.
But that's a good comment. I certainly will. We certainly will have questions about water.
Yes.
The reason we have switched to bottled water was strictly my viewing only, and not the commissions. We had pitchers of water before with city water that they drank at every meeting, but it's much more convenient to use the bottled water. That's the only reason we switched. I apologize.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember what I wanted to ask. And I'm older than you, so I'm okay. I'll save it for another day, 'cause I can't think of what it was
It'll come
now.
back up.
After I leave, I'm sure it'll come back.
As the operator, I commend you for drinking the bottled water because they're not held to the same standard that I am.
Yeah, that's true. That is true.
And ain't no telling what's in here.
Yeah, that is
This-
true.
Yep. Yeah, I don't care how much they talking about. Pure water, pure life. It come from some system somewhere.
Yeah, it did. Absolutely it did. Somebody said.
Oh, I know what my question was now. I would assume, based upon this issue that we know we have of dead-end water lines, that when any new developments go in, they are looped into the system so
That is
that we
correct.
don't have dead ends for at least future problems.
That's right, and we're looking at our dead ends to run them over to some of the subdivisions, and so we'll rework as cheaply as we can some of these things.
And also, when you visit other places that use these types of systems, I'm quite sure we're gonna ask you questions of what's the disadvantages, what's the possibility, what happened, what we do if this problem happened, and so on and so on and so on. I think that's a good idea to visit other folks with these types of systems.
I do have another question on this loop thing, on this dead ends. Since rural water is helping us on this and they're with DEP, and if we when we identify where these problem dead ends are, maybe they'd be willing to give us some money to help us resolve, to connect them to resolve this, you know.
So we talked, Rodney and I went to Swanee River, and we talked to them about grants. And a lot of it for water systems. We're also talking about money for shutoffs, because when we have a water break, it's very difficult for shutting off the water. And it's very difficult to fix a leak when you have the water running out at 30 pounds per square inch or more. And so you're absolutely right that those are available, but they're probably going to do some ground radar to identify where our pipes are, and then we have to do a full system of a map, figure out really where all the dead ends are. There will always be a few dead ends, but we want to eliminate as many as we possibly can.
All right, I just wanna make sure we explain to people what's going on and let them know DEP is working with us, and they ain't gonna die if they drink the water. Just in spite of what some people in the community say. Just what it is. And that's why I tell people all the time, they have questions to call City Hall, ask somebody to know what they're talking about instead of going on a whim what other people may think or say. It's so important for them to get the truth, not half truth. Okay, is that it, Mr. City Manager?
We're gonna walk Monday,
Yes, sir.
10:30, then we walk 11.
We meet at 10:30 and we leave at 11.
Yeah.
And where you move, James? Or where you?
And I don't think it'll be as cold on Monday as it has been the last couple of days.
And all that we are having something Friday night, opening ceremony will be, all the commissions have some for those in the audience. Opening ceremony will be Friday at 7 p.m. at Allen Chapel. And Sunday worship service will be Sunday, 4 p.m. at Mount Olive. I don't like to come up.
The Chamber of Commerce has their
6 o'clock.
has their ball.
I'm splitting myself up that Friday. So I'm gonna be in two places at one time. Yeah.
Do you need a ticket?
Huh?
Do you need a ticket?
Do I need?
Yeah, you do.
Yeah, if you don't have one.
Yeah. Give them.
There you go.
Well, I'm gonna pass.
That's exactly right.
I'm still the
Yeah.
citizen of the year,
Well,
so I shouldn't have to pay.
For a good time longer.
Now maybe next year I should have.
You gonna give up that hat Friday night.
But Ross, I still wear the hat, so I shouldn't have to pay, right?
Right.
Yep.
Until after, I give up the hat. I tried.
You tried. Chamber need that $10.
Talk to Yvonne. Give me like
I kept quiet on that, y'all. But we still recording now.
she's the president.
Uh-oh.
All right, if there's nothing else. Need to come before the commission. At this time, we adjourn this meeting.
All right.
Oh.
I gotta take this and read it.
Tomorrow?